Of all places, we've got a fun, underrated matchup in Birmingham as 7-5 Georgia Tech takes on 6-6 Vanderbilt, maybe America's team in this 2024 college football season, finally making the postseason under Clark Lee. And this is a battle, guys, between two teams I like to call the Giant Killers. Maybe a battle between giant killers, as both Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt played a major role in shaping out not just the format of college football this year, but shaping out how the 12-team playoff was set at the end of the year. We'll touch on that here in 1 second, but welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're so glad you could join us today. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That, of course, includes our expert picks, home of our holiday special. Gives you every single bowl game spread pick. Still not too late to sign up for those. We still have tons of football left to be played, so you do not want to miss out on the holiday special, giving you all those bowl game picks and all of our NFL spread picks from now until the end of the season, including every single playoff game. We're coming off a perfect undefeated week, and was it week 15, week 16 in the NFL? Undefeated there. Very profitable for us, profitable for our expert pick subscribers. We want you to take advantage of that and become a member of our GE Nation. The link to that, again, in the description below. So Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt, look, we said they're giant killers, right? They played a massive role in how this playoff was formatted this year. You know, you look at Vanderbilt. Their upset over Alabama ultimately kept the Crimson Tide out of the college football playoff. You could argue Oklahoma did the same thing. But if Alabama doesn't lose to Vanderbilt, they're in the college football playoff. They don't lose to Oklahoma, they're in as well. But that Vanderbilt win was massive. Vanderbilt doesn't beat Alabama, they're not in this bowl game right now, playing Georgia Tech. So that was a massive win. And keep in mind, the Commodores also played within one score, within one possession of Missouri, Texas, and LSU. So very competitive in the SEC this year. Georgia Tech, on the other hand, had that massive upset win over Miami. That win ultimately keeping the Hurricanes out of the college football playoff. You could say it was because of what Syracuse did in the season finale as well. But again, if Georgia Tech doesn't beat the Hurricanes, they are in the playoff even with the Syracuse loss. At least I believe that's what would have happened in my eyes. So both these teams playing major roles, taking down two of the best teams in the country at the time and keeping them out of the college football playoff when it was all said and done. Playing a massive role just in the landscape of this wild season. We take a look at the teams now, though. They face off against each other, playing very similar styles of ball. We start on offense with Georgia Tech, who loves to run the football. They're averaging over 427 yards per game, over 186 of that coming on the ground. And why wouldn't you run the ball when you've got, number one, a dangerous dual-threat quarterback in Haynes King, who's rushed for nearly 600 yards and 11 touchdowns this year, but has also thrown for over 1,900 yards, 11 touchdowns, and just one interception, so takes great care of the ball. But you also got Jamal Haynes in your backfield as well, with over 800 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns on the year. So you've got a dual-threat quarterback, a speedy running back at your disposal. It's been working time and time again, over and over again for Georgia Tech this season. I don't expect them to stray from that now as they take on Vanderbilt. We do know, though, that the Yellow Jackets will be without their number one wide receiver, and Eric Singleton had over 750 reception yards this year, but has recently signed with Auburn. So he'll be coming over to the SEC. They still have Malik Rutherford, at least as of this video, over 670 yards, 3 touchdowns on the year. The key, obviously, for Georgia Tech, though, is running the football. We said at the beginning, we say it now, they have to run it, and they have to run it effectively. It doesn't matter, if you run the ball 50 times and you're not getting anywhere, you're not going to win the game, right? You've got to run and run effectively. Georgia Tech was held to 112 rushing yards or less in 4 of their 5 losses this year. So the opponents that figured out how to stop the run for the Yellow Jackets were able to beat them. The ones that were not couldn't get it done. The only exception was when Georgia Tech ran for over 200 yards in their loss to Georgia in, 8 overtime game in the season finale. I think they had about 260 in that game and still found a way to lose, unfortunately. But regardless, most teams, when you shut down the Yellow Jackets run game, you win. Georgia Tech, if they can't run, they lose. They've got to find a way to get that going early and often against Vanderbilt. The Commodores are kind of structured the same way. It is the Diego Pavia show. You've got Haynes King, who's so great for Georgia Tech, but you've got Diego Pavia, who is pretty much, I'm not going to say the main reason Vanderbilt's here right now, but is like 80% of the reason Vanderbilt's where they are right now. Finding competent quarterback play that takes great care of the ball and has a dual threat capability. Pavia has been amazing this year. Over 2,100 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. He's also Vanderbilt's leading rusher with over 700 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns on the year. Problem is, he kind of is a one-man show, right? Vanderbilt's offense outside of him is pretty lackluster. As a whole, the Commodores are averaging just 319 yards per game. That's 123rd in the nation. They're averaging only 180 passing yards per game. That's 117th in the nation. And only 139 rushing yards per game. That's 86th in the nation. So this offense is mediocre at best, pretty much below average. They need big breakout games from Diego Pavia, or they need very fortunate special teams or defensive plays to set up their offense to win these games. I'm not saying Vanderbilt's a lucky team. I'm not saying their wins are a fluke, but I'm saying they can't continue to win games, and they can't expect to continue to win games by putting everything on Diego Pavia's shoulders. It's just not going to happen. And keep in mind this. You look back at Vanderbilt's win over Alabama. They dropped 40 points in that game against the Crimson Tide. Their defense was phenomenal. Diego Pavia was phenomenal. Everything was clicking against Alabama. Since that point, they've won a lot of games since then, but they have failed to eclipse 24 points. They dropped 40 against Alabama, had over 30 in their loss to Georgia State, played pretty well against Virginia Tech in that game there, the season opener. But since they beat Alabama, Vanderbilt has not eclipsed 24 points. That is concerning. That's a shock. Maybe it's a credit to how good their defense has been because they've won some games since then, but also shows how much their offense is struggling. Defensively, you look at Georgia Tech, you read that and you go, hey, we can do this. We can stop Diego Pavia. We can win this game. They're giving up just 346 yards per game, only 24.8 points per game, only 225 through the air, and only 120 on the ground. And that is your key number. Only 120 rushing yards per game is all Georgia Tech's allowing. That's the key number. If you contain Diego Pavia and do not allow him to beat you with his legs, do not allow him to pick up first downs with his legs, extend plays with his legs, you contain him in that pocket, you are good. He's not a bad passer. He takes great care of the football. He's relatively accurate, but he doesn't have all the great weapons surrounding him that can beat you through the air if you're Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech's got to find a way to collapse the pocket, force Diego Pavia to stay in there, step into his throws and deliver. Maybe you can force a handful of mistakes. Georgia Tech, though, the problem is they only have 17 sacks on the year. They only have 11 forced turnovers on the year. So what this really says to me is you're not going to get much pressure on him. You're not going to force many mistakes off of him. What you've got to do is you've somehow got to find a way to just force constant 3-and-outs. 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out. Sure, hope you force a turnover. Hope you get some mistakes. Sure, but odds are you're probably not going to do that. You haven't done it all year. Force some 3-and-outs. You can do that. Just get basic stops. Or bend and then don't break, right? Allow them to get a couple first downs. Let them get past the 50-yard line. But as long as they're not putting points on the board, it's all good. They can put up 1,000 yards of offense. But as long as they don't put points on the board, you're all good. And that's what Georgia Tech has to go into this game with, that type of mindset. That's how you do it. Stop Pavia. Vanderbilt, what do? Well, you got to stop Haynes King. You got to stop Jamal Haynes. You've got to force turnover. There's a lot going for the Commodores here against what's a pretty tough Georgia Tech offense. Vanderbilt is a little bit better in terms of creating pressure and creating turnovers, right? The Commodores have forced 14 turnovers. They have 23 sacks on the year. Both those marks higher than that of Georgia Tech. They are 75th in overall defense, allowing just 375 yards per game, which in the SEC isn't too bad. In the SEC, going up against Texas and Alabama and LSU and guys like that, that's not too bad of a mark. They're giving up just 238 passing yards per game, 136 on the ground. That's 45th in the nation. Ain't too shabby. But here's the thing. They're 6-6, right? They've allowed Vanderbilt has allowed at least 230 passing yards in every single loss this year. Every single game they've lost, they've allowed at least 230 passing yards. And they've allowed over 139 rushing yards in 5 of their 6 losses. So they're allowing their opponents to be relatively balanced. They're allowing their opponents to win through the air. They're allowing them to win on the ground. And Georgia Tech's over here going, thank you, thank you, thank you. We want to do that with Haynes King. We want to do that with a guy who has 5 games of 250 passing yards or more. 2 games where he has thrown for at least 300 yards, including the season finale against Georgia, where he did throw for 300 yards and did everything he could to lead his Yellow Jackets to victory. They want to be able to do that. So Vanderbilt, if you want to win this game defensively, you've got to find ways to force turnovers. You've got to find ways to put Diego Pavia on your offense in favorable situations, in favorable field position to put points on the board. And you've got to find a way to contain Haynes King, who has been playing phenomenal when he's been healthy. And we know he's going to be healthy heading into this game. So ultimately, guys, the Birmingham Bowl, 2 teams. I mean, really, if you look at the way the season has gone for Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt, the way these teams play football, these teams are very, very similar, at least in my eyes. And that's why this is a very intriguing matchup for me. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Georgia Tech here. I believe Georgia Tech is the better team. I believe they have the better quarterback right now in Haynes King. I believe they get the better offensive weapons than that of Vanderbilt. And I believe their defense can contain Diego Pavia. He'll have some breakthrough plays here and there, but they will be able to contain him. They will be able to limit his big play abilities. I like Brent Key just a little bit more than Clark Lee right now, but both these teams are going to be playing inspired football and are desperately going to want to get a bowl victory to carry some momentum into 2025. But I believe the Yellow Jackets prevail. They clinch an 8-win season. But credit to both these teams for what they did against the Giants, the Giant Killers, Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt. Credit to getting to this point. And I do believe both these teams will have a successful 2025 campaign, regardless of what the outcome is here in just a few days. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes those expert picks, that holiday special for all of our bowl game spread picks, for all of our NFL picks from now until the end of the year. Do not miss out on that. The link for it down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.